Yo, what up guys? So, YouTubers are becoming powerful, and whenever something begins to become powerful, the only thing to do is to power scale. It's like YouTube slowly turning into DBZ. So what we have to do is sort out these power levels. That's what I'm going to be doing today. This is all levels of power for YouTube. Everything kicked off at the beginning of the year when KSI fought Joella, and KSI won that fight, and so he goes straight to the top as currently the most powerful YouTuber in history. At the level he was at back then, his power level was around a 7. You know, not insane, but still a little bit stronger than the average guy. Eventually down the line, more guys show up and we get to see all the levels of power on display. And this is what they are. With Deji and Jake, I expected a lot more out of Jake Paul and a lot less out of Deji. If Deji had KSI's stamina, he wins that fight, 100% of the time. You saw what he did to his nose. Deji came out unfazed, he was just tired. Jake Paul had so much reach that he just didn't use, and he never guarded his face either. Deji was getting up in his face, but as the fight went on, his heart rate just exploded, and from there, Jake Paul was in the better shape and he just took it home, and that's why his power level is going to be slightly higher than Deji's. If there was a rematch though, I'd be 100% backing Deji. With KSI vs Logan Paul, it was a lot more close, but KSI is going to get the points. Even though it was a draw, if it was any more than 6 rounds, KSI wins. The only reason Logan Paul's on his level is because of his performance in the first 2 rounds. KSI was outpacing him, the fighting was pretty even I thought, but overall KSI pretty much had Goku stamina, and that's why he's at the top. Logan Paul only slightly underneath him. So now that we have all 4 fighters, where do they stand in comparison to each other? You'd think that KSI is at the top, then Logan Paul, then Jake Paul, then Deji. But I think you could make a serious argument for Deji and Jake Paul. Let's just run the numbers and see what happens. At number 1, the strongest, the guy who keeps his power level, is KSI. That stamina was on another level compared to everyone else, not to mention that half ultra instinct he was doing with his head. But someone is closing in very fast. With only a few months of training, he was able to match it with him. I think in the rematch it might be a bit much for KSI. If Logan Paul keeps his consistency through the first 2 rounds, all throughout the 6 rounds, it would be a different story. But he couldn't do it. It's weird though, because Logan Paul looks fit, right? He doesn't look like he'd run out of stamina, but he did. And so here are the final levels of power for YouTube. Number 1 KSI, number 2 Logan Paul, 3 Jake Paul, 4 Deji. But you really could make an argument for Deji though. If that towel didn't get thrown in, who knows what could have happened. So the question is, does it get any higher than this? Is there anyone who could surpass this? And the answer is yes. The thing is, when you get to 20 mil, the amount of guys that you can fight gets narrowed down a lot. There's a lot of big names on YouTube who maybe aren't all there physically, and that's why if you want to find someone who peaks this list, you gotta look deep. If we just take a look over at the commentators box, there's a man in there who could put an end to all of this with one hand. No, it's not Joella still. Talking about True Geordie. He didn't fight in this tournament for a reason, and that's because if he did, his opponent would shrivel up inside himself and eventually self-combust. True Geordie is the grand priest of YouTube boxing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Dragon Ball video. Yo, and Seth, if you're trying to make a debunk video, I'm just going to stop you right now. I'm not about the debunks anymore. If you want to try to make a point, do it with your hands.